that how you're going to get ignorance?
Okay, let's begin. All right. So we are on the Mishnah. And the Gemara, the Mishnah is now going to continue on 7b1, about half the way down the page. The Gemara is now going to continue on a sequence of n bens. Okay? 7b2, sorry. 7b2 on Zayin Amud Bet, halfway down. The Mishnah says as follows. N ben. So what is N ben? Remember we just had N ben. There's no difference between Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni except for, right? So once we're kind of on the N ben train, we're going to go N ben, N ben, N ben. Nothing to do with Purim now. So take a look for a Mishnah. You see N ben Yom Tov Shabbat? Yes. Yeah. Look at the next Mishnah. N ben Shabbat Yom Kippurim. See? Yeah. You see the next Mishnah? Turn another page in the Hebrew. So these are all statements of en ben. There's no difference between this and this. Okay?
And it's no connection to Purim?
It's no connection, zero connection to Purim.
Okay? That's not the only difference.
Just the en ben.
That's a difference.
Okay? So we'll see. We're going to get there.
It's reading this Mishnah and then it's going
into the en ben statement. Each Mishnah is going to give another en ben statement, and then we're going to break down that en ben statement. Okay, let's go. En ben Yom Tov Shabbat. There's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbat. Ela ochel nefesh bilvad. Only ochel nefesh. Only the food preparation that a person needs to be able to eat on the holiday. Now take a look for 1 second at Rashi. Rashi says right up there on the side, Matnitan en ben Yom Tov Shabbat. Lihiyot mutar lecha techila biyom tov, ma she'asur b'Shabbat. What do we mean when we say en ben? We mean there's no difference between Yom Tov and Shabbat with regards to what you're allowed to do in the first place. Okay? Other than ochel nefesh, the preparation of food. Right? Because, so that's the point. The Gemara says, ma she'asur b'Shabbat, aval le'inyan onshin, when it comes to punishment, yesh harbeh, there's many differences. Shezeh b'skila, one of them has stoning by Shabbat or karet. Another one has malkut, is lashes for Yom Tov. So with regard, when we say en ben, we mean en ben in this lane. And what's the lane that he's giving? En ben with regards to what you're allowed to do l'chatechila on Yom Tov. Your question of carrying is going to come up in just 1 second. Okay, Nathan? Let's see what the Gemara says. So are we clear so far? So Shabbat and Yom Tov are both asur. Whatever you're not allowed to do on Shabbat, you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov, with the exception of things that involve food preparation. Ochel nefesh. Says the Gemara, Hali inyan machshire ochel nefesh. But when it comes to machshire ochel nefesh, what does it mean machshire ochel nefesh? The word machshire or machshir always means the thing that comes before the thing. So as an example, you have Brit Milah. Are you allowed to do Brit Milah on Shabbat? Yes. Are you allowed to do Machshireh Brit Milah on Shabbat? No. What is Machshireh Brit Milah? Let's say as an example, I need to bring the knife to do the Brit Milah. Am I allowed to carry the knife to the house to do the Brit Milah?
Yeah, Eruv.
No. If there's an Eruv, you're not carrying. But in a scenario where you are carrying, maybe I should say the same way I'm allowed to do Brit Milah, which is forbidden on Shabbat. Other than the fact that the Torah tells us I'm allowed to do it on Shabbat, right? Because it says Bayom HaShemini, whatever day that happens to be, whatever day the 8th day falls out to be. So machshireh means anything that comes before the thing that you're doing. So or heating up the water to be able to rinse the baby for infection for Brit Milah, as an example. So you're allowed to do that melacha. That's machshir. So the Gemara over here says, if you told me ochel nefesh is the only thing, when it came to the thing that was preparing for the preparation of ochel nefesh, zev shavin, both of them are equal in terms of the fact that they're both asur. So you're not allowed to do the thing before the thing for Yom Tov. In other words, you'd be allowed to cook for Yom Tov, but you wouldn't be allowed to do the thing that got you the wood, uproot the wood in order to be able to burn the wood on Shabbat for Yom Tov. Okay? Now, where did the Gemara read this from? Because if it meant if it wanted to tell you that you could do also those earlier levels, it would have said specifically, and machshirei ochel nefesh, and including the preliminary. Why? Because the preliminary is a bigger chidush. It's 2 steps removed from the words ochel nefesh. However, but the Gemara is deducing from the fact that the Mishnah says ochel nefesh that preliminary specifically are permitted. So the Gemara says, who is that going according to? Who is the Mishnah that says ochel nefesh, yes? The thing that comes before ochel nefesh, no. Who is that? The Gemara brings matnitan. The Mishnah, the look at Rabbi Yehuda is not according to Rabbi Yehuda. What does it mean? The Tanya, because we learned in the Braita, and Ben Yom Tov the Shabbat, same Braita, right? Same idea. There's no difference in Yom Tov and Shabbat. Ela ochel nefesh bilvad, only ochel nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda matir. Rabbi Yehuda says, af machshirei ochel nefesh. Rabbi Yehuda allows even the things that come before the preparation for the food. So the preparation for the preparation, Rabbi Yehuda also allows. Now the Gemara is going to ask. So 1 second. So could we just be clear? So the Mishnah says, ochel nefesh, yes, not preparation for ochel nefesh, right? So who would that be going according to? According to the
Mishnah.
According to Tanakama. The Mishnah would be like the Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda would be not like the Mishnah, because he allows even preparation for ochel nefesh. Now the Gemara is going to ask, why? Yes.
So like the Mishnah says there, like Shabbat and Yom Tov, there is a difference for food preparation.
No difference, except food preparation.
Except food preparation. So the food preparation, there can be a difference.
Yes.
But the preliminary.
What does it mean there can be a difference?
Like
it means that Yom Tov you're allowed.
Yeah.
Shabbat you're not.
Okay, and then the Gemara says the preliminary to the preparation.
Exactly. So if you told me,
what's the preliminary to for preparation?
So let's say as an example, ochel nefesh would mean I'm allowed to turn on the fire in order to heat the food. Right? But am I allowed to go chop the wood to make the fire?
Oh, gotcha. What about chopping the lettuce or whatever, the vegetables?
So that's food preparation itself.
Okay.
So anything that's food preparation itself, that's incorporated in ochel nefesh. Preliminary to the food preparation, to the melacha, is 2 steps removed that the Mishnah is indicating is not allowed. Okay? Even on Yom Tov. Okay? Rabbi Yehuda. I don't want to get into the details because the minute we do, there's endless examples. Okay, so let's stay with that, and Bezrat Hashem, we learn Masechet Betzah. We'll cover that in depth. What the halachot of Yom Tov are, because again, we're going to need to go too deep into this, which is a peripheral topic for us. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says, "Af machshirei ochel nefesh." The Gemara says, "My ta'amad tanakama." What's the logic behind this machloket? It's not just a machloket. I always love that. You know, people say, "What's the halacha?" It's a machloket. Like machloket, it came from somewhere. Why did one opinion hold what they held and the other opinion hold what they held? And the Gemara says specifically, Amar Kra, the Tanakama says, Hu v'lo machshirav. It and not its preliminary actions. Rabbi Yehuda says, Lachem, if it says Lachem in the Torah, Lachem l'chol tzorchechem. For you for all your needs. Now, let's just say the pasuk inside, which is what we always do. Look in the inner column, you'll see it. Ubayom harishon, you see bet? Ubiyom Harishon on the first day, Mikra Kodesh is a holy day. Ubiyom HaShevi'i on the 7th day, Mikra Kodesh is a holy day. Yeh lachem, it shall be for you. Kol melacha, any work, lo yaseh, should not be done by him on those days.
So that's Sunday.
Except
Sunday
for, sorry?
That's Sunday and Shabbat.
No, it means the first day of the holiday. On the first day of the holiday and on the 7th day of the holiday. Yeah, lo yaseh by him. You're not allowed to do melacha on those days. Asher ya'achel, except for that which is eaten, l'chol nefesh, for every person, hu levado ya'aseh lachem. So on the holiday, what are you allowed to do? So you can't do work, and then the pasuk itself gives you the exception. Asher ya'achel l'chol nefesh, except for something which is everybody needs to be able to eat. By the way, you know what that means, l'chol nefesh? We're not going to cover this, so I don't want to spend too much time. But the Gemara says in Betzah, Hana'ah hashaveh l'chol nefesh. So it says anything that everybody needs. So what does it mean everybody needs? it means something that is equally needed by everybody. Let's say you have something that only a couple people need. It's not a general need, it's a preference. So only hana'ah hashaveh lechol nefesh is allowed. By the way, it's a big source of machloket. Are you allowed to smoke on Yom Tov? So it used to be that everybody smoked. It was considered to be helpful for your digestion. When they finished, they would be smoking. I remember in the shul at breakfast in my father's synagogue, there was a big fat ashtray in the middle of the breakfast table. 3 or 4 people would be smoking at breakfast like chimneys. Ready from the time I was a young boy. Okay? So at the time, it was hana'eh shaveh l'chol nefesh. There are those that want to argue that today it's asur to smoke a cigarette on Shabbat. On Yom Tov. Why? Because look around. How many cigarettes you see people? Only Europeans now still smoke cigarettes. So now we have vaping. Now what's vaping? Okay, we'll go to get there. Now, now the pasuk says, except for the exclusion is something which is food, asher ya'achel l'chol nefesh, which is to be consumed by all people. Hu levado ya'aseh lachem. That alone, ya'aseh lachem, shall be done for you. So the first opinion picks on the word who. Who is like that. It's indicating that and not something else. So they see here a statement of exclusion. But on the other opinion, Rabbi Yehuda, who includes whatever you need, he says, Hu levado ya'aseh lachem, like whatever you need. That's an expansive statement. So the Tana Kama saw here a mi'ut, a excluding statement of who, and therefore he says only ochel nefesh, which is what the pasuk itself says. Rabbi Yehuda says no, it says ochel nefesh lachem, whatever you need for ochel nefesh, and that would include even preliminary elements of preparation, l'chol tzorchechem, for all your needs. Now the Gemara says, hold on. If you just identify that there's 2 extra words in this pasuk, and how can we prove it? Let's read the pasuk without those extra words, okay? You're not allowed to do any melacha. Ach asher yachel lachem, asher yachel lachol nefesh, levado ye'aseh. Only something that is food or consumption for everybody, levado alone, ye'aseh, shall be done. So you don't need the who, and you don't need the lachem. Both words are clearly extra if you could read the verse without having them. So the Gemara is now going to basically ask a backward-forward question. You, Mr. Who, how do you understand why the pasuk used the word lachem? And you, Mr. Lachem, how do you understand why the pasuk used the word who? Okay? So again, obvious what the Gemara is going to do. Says the Gemara, okay. Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda that allows preliminary as well. Why does he? Amar lachem, lachem l'chol tzorchechem. V'idach nami, but according to the other person, the Tana Kama, haktiv lachem, it also says for you, indicating that whatever you need, you should be allowed to do so, expanding the remit of ochel nefesh. On that, the Gemara answers, lachem, he says for you, it's true, it's an extra word. It's coming to tell you, v'lo le'ovdei kochavim, lachem v'lo le'klavim. You're not allowed to cook on Yom Tov for someone who's not Jewish. So the heter that we gave you to cook on the holiday, I allowed you to do it for ochel nefesh, lachem, for you, for Jewish people. For a goy, they want to cook on Yom Tov, let the housekeeper, let her make her own egg. Right? But for you to cook for on Yom Tov, really it's asur to cook. We only allowed you to cook for your own food consumption. It's not your food, it's for someone else, not Jewish, you're not allowed to cook for it. Lachem lo lechlavim. For the animals also, you have to cook for your animals. You want to prepare some treats for a spot. The halacha is, you can't make food, you can't cook the food for your dog or for your animal as well. Gemara continues, v'idach nami. By the way, why does it say for dogs? Anyone know?
Common pet at the time.
Sorry? Okay. Nice one. Better?
Animals, all animals.
All animals. Did you say animals? Why did you say dogs?
Because they did something for us in Mitzrayim.
Excellent. What is this pasuk? This pasuk is about the 1st and 7th day of Pesach. And what did we just say when we left Egypt? That when the dogs didn't bark, what are you supposed to do? What's the reward for the dogs not barking? We feed them the scraps. So says the pasuk, lachem, even the dogs that you have a mitzvah to feed. Isn't that beautiful? Hidush. Okay. Carry on. Says the Gemara.
Great.
Now let's go the other way. So the guy that says lachem, meaning that you can't do, what's it called? That you can do even preliminary. He also has the word hu. What does he use hu to exclude? The Gemara says ktiv hu uktiv lachem. It says this, that specifically. Uktiv lachem, and it says wide for you, which implies extra. So what does he do with this contradiction? Kan b'machshirin she'efshar la'asotan me'erev yom tov. When it comes to something preliminary that you could have done before the holiday, now you're saying, oh, I want to do this on the holiday. What do we tell you? You should have done that before the holiday. So therefore it will be asur. That's why it says who. Only the things that you need to do on Yom Tov. If you could have done it before Yom Tov and you didn't, it's your problem. However, what does lachem mean? Kan, the opposite ones are machshirim she'efshar. So the ones that you're allowed to do are things that you could not have done before Yom Tov. And the ones that you aren't allowed to do are the things that you could have done before the holiday. Is that clear? Yes? Let me give you one example of this idea. It's not necessarily learned from here, but I want to give you one example. Halacha is that when we don't shave on Chol HaMoed, right? So if you ever see the rabbi is looking scruffy, second holiday, sorry?
Who's we?
Shulchan Aruch already brings it. Okay? If there's a heter in a certain case, person in business, go figure that out. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about straight halakha. Straight halakha says you're not allowed to shave on Chol HaMoed. Okay? Gemara, the reason for that is because, right, what's the reason for it? Because we didn't want the guy to go into the first holiday unshaven, unclean, thinking, you know what, I'll shave tomorrow. So therefore, in order to make sure, we told him, if you don't shave, you're not going to be able to shave till the end. So what happens? Now the guy doesn't want to go a week without shaving. So he makes sure that he comes into the holiday looking like a mensch. Clear? Okay? Asks the halacha, what happens if you have a guy's in prison. He's released from prison on Chol HaMoed. The whole reason why we did it was to make sure that you do it before the holiday. But if you had no option of doing it before the holiday, then we would allow you to come to shave on the holiday. So this is very similar to this idea that we're seeing. Something that you could have done before, you got to do before. We're not willy-nilly canceling Yom Tov here. Something that you could not possibly have done before. There's no possibility to do it before. So that we say you'd be allowed to do it on the holiday, even if it's a preliminary thing before the act of Ochel Nefesh. Let's continue. Sorry?
Would it also apply for Avel? Someone just finished their 30 days?
What do you mean? Would he be able to?
Shave on
Well, the holiday ends the days.
Right, but usually someone
The
doesn't
beginning
shave
of the
for 30
holiday
days.
ends the days.
The holiday ends the days. Yeah, because there's no avilut in the holiday, right?
The holiday doesn't end the 30 days, does it?
For some things, yes.
Oh, really?
Yes, it shortens the days. Whether it appears in the beginning, middle, or the end, okay? But again, not to go into the details of something that is a larger story. Okay, let's continue. And ben Shabbat Yom Kippurim. The Mishnah continues and says, there's no difference now between Shabbat and Yom Kippur. Right? Now, that sounds to me to be pretty amazing. What do you mean there's no difference between Shabbat and Yom Kippur? Ela sheze zedono bidei adam, v'ze zedono bekaret.
Shabbaton.
What? There's no difference? Again, so we already explained. And ben doesn't mean that there's no difference. What do you mean? We don't pray the same as Shabbat and we pray on Yom Kippur? What do you mean? What about this difference is fasting?
It's totally minimizing the value of Yom Kippur.
Right? It sounds like it's minimizing Yom Kippur. And the answer is, it's giving one lane. In the specific lane of punishments, there's no difference between the punishment of this one and this one, except for this.
It's a weird phraseology, though.
It is a weird phraseology. Except that what we're trying to communicate here is that in our language, what we're trying to evaluate is, there's no difference between this and this. But like as an example, I would imagine there are many conversations that happen in Morris's office where he's sitting down with a client. He says, look, if you do this or if you do this, there's no difference. And he really means there's no difference in terms of criminal intent. Or he means there's no difference in terms of taxes intent. Of course, there's a million other differences in how you're going to structure the deal or how you're going to... He was just saying there's no difference in profit. There's no difference with regards to taxes. There's no difference. So in whatever area you happen to be having that conversation, that's what's going to dictate what this en ben is. Now remember, this is not the home of this idea. This is not Masechet Shabbat, and it's not Masechet Yuma. It's Masechet Megillah. All we did was we took another en ben, cherry-picked it from somewhere else, stuck it over here for the sake of keeping all these together. So it's a memory mnemonic that when you're remembering the things that don't have a difference between this and this, but yes, in the context in which this is said, it gives you much more of a narrowing field, so you know exactly what it means. So it says, yeah, go ahead.
Is there a reason the Gemara is interposing these conversations about Shabbat, Yom Tov, Yom Kippurim here?
Oh, so that was the opening line, which you missed, is that we brought in En Ben. There's no difference between Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni. So once we brought in the En Ben formula, the rest of this, of the Mishnayot in this chapter, are En Ben.
Got it.
Okay? That's all that there is. Okay. Says the Gemara. Says the Mishnah. En Ben. So there's no difference between Shabbat and Yom Kippurim. Ela shezeh zedono b'dei adam. When you do something on purpose, when it comes to Shabbat, there's a human intervention, okay, b'dei adam. And when it comes to Yom Kippurim, zeh zedono bekaret. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu deals with Yom Kippurim. So even on what Ray just commented a minute ago, it sounds like we're minimizing Yom Kippurim. I'm not sure if it sounds minimizing if like Hashem himself comes down to smite you with karet. Like, you know, it still sounds like Yom Kippur is pretty serious. Karet in many ways is actually far worse than being punished by the Beit Din.
It's premature death.
Number one, premature death. But there's other elements of karet which can be karet varidi, where the person's children also die. Right? So we're talking about like a complete cutting off of the guy. The guy is like, his name is getting wiped off the face of the earth. Okay? So again, we're not going to go there, but I kind of feel like Yom Kippur is still, you know, in that elevated status. But as Mara said, the Pasuk does say literally, Shabbat Shabbaton. It uses the words Shabbat Shabbaton with regards to Yom Kippurim. Okay. Let's go to the Gemara. So the Gemara is going to say exactly what we did before. When you just told me that the difference is in the process of of the person's death penalty with Shabbat and Yom Kippurim, I could infer, what do I see from that? That with regard to tashlumin, to any sort of payment or monetary fine, zev v'zeh shavin, then they're the same. There wouldn't be a difference between those two things on a monetary level. Es the Gemara, same structure as just what we saw before. Mani matnitan. So who is the Mishnah? Who's the author of this Mishnah that says this idea that you just told me through extrapolation, which is that when it comes to issues of mamonot, of money, then both of these days are exactly the same.
What's a monetary fine on Shabbat?
What do you mean? You're asking? I'm not sure. Explain what you're asking.
Well, in this case, Tal Shlumin, what is, in regards to monetary payments, the same on Shabbat and Kippur? What's an example of this?
We're about to see it. Okay. My matnitan. Who is this Mishnah? Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakanai. The Gemara answers, it's Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana. So what does that mean? Who's the opposite? What was the other option? Titania, as it says. Okay, the Braita teaches us. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana yoseh et Yom Kippurim ki Shabbat tashlumin. He considered Shabbat the same as Yom Kippur with regards to monetary issues, which is exactly what we just inferred from the Mishnah a second ago, that there's a difference in death penalty, but not in other kinds of penalty. Okay? And what did he do? How did he do that? Ma Shabbat, just like Shabbat. And if a person does an avon, which at the same time carries a hayuv of mammon, mitchayev benafsho, he's obligated, he pays for it with his life. Upatur min hatashlumin, does not pay for it. Av Yom Kippurim, so too Yom Kippurim, where the person does in one act, an act that obligates him, mitchayev benafsho, he gets the death penalty, which was, like we said, God gives him karet, cuts him off. Upatur min hatashlumin, still he would be exempt from tashlumin. So what's the example? The example of the Gemara specifically is a case. Let's say as an example, right? What's the halakha with regards to lighting a fire on Shabbat? Can't do it. What? Sorry? That's Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur. Let's say I light something on fire on Shabbat. Did I break Shabbat? Yeah. In fact, that is the single explicitly expressed melacha on Shabbat in the Torah. Correct? What else is explicitly mentioned in the Torah on Shabbat that you can't do? In the Torah that you can't do on Shabbat?
Melacha.
Which other? Yeah, melacha. Melacha is the 39 melachot that we learned from how they built the Mishkan. Wonderful. But it doesn't say any of them. But with fire it says, Lo tiva'aru esh You shall not light a fire in any of your dwellings. There's one other example. I cheated. Sorry.
Plowing? It's a
Doesn't say plowing.
building a boat.
Nope. Nope.
And collecting the fire.
Hint, it's not here. It's not in the same place as we learned Lo Tiva'aru Esh. Huh?
To kakel? No. It's not to destroy.
No.
Is it?
Nope.
Well, meeking's allowed, so.
Well,
Found that one.
Strike that from the record. I instruct the jury to my friends. What do you, right? What does it say you're not allowed to do? It says, "V'ish al yitzeh mimkomo yom HaShabbat." When they were going to go collect the manna that was outside the camp, God says a double portion comes down on Friday because they couldn't go out and collect the manna and bring it back home. Two isurim are part of that. One is carrying, and one is tchum, going more than 2,000 amot outside of the city. There's one other thing that one could argue is in the Torah, although it's hidden, and that's the mikoshesh etzim. The guy chopped the wood on Shabbat, and they punished him. Right? So mikoshesh, that's another one, chopping wood. What isur is chopping wood? Tolesh. So long as the trees are alive, it's tolesh, which means to uproot, because you're cutting something off from its life supply. Okay? Now, what's clear to me is that absolutely we can all agree that everybody understands that lighting a fire is asur on Shabbat. So I could light a fire and I get the death penalty. How about if instead of lighting a fire in my backyard, I go light your car on fire? So the same action, which gets me the death penalty, gets me also a monetary fine. I have to pay you back for the car.
I thought you're exempt from it if you have the death penalty.
So though that is the case, okay, the halacha is now following that. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana says, if on Shabbat, when I get the death penalty, that absolves me from the monetary, okay? So on Yom Kippur too, if I get the death penalty for lighting the fire, I'm also absolved from the idea. Now I'm not sure how far we want to go, and there's always a little bit especially because it's not germane to our specific discussion, but I'll give you the basic idea. The basic idea is rooted in something that's called kam le b'deraba mineh. You know what that means?
Can you say kam le?
Kam le b'deraba mineh.
Learn this from Rabbi's words.
No. Good guess. Kam le stands up on him, b'deraba, from the one, same idea, from the larger mineh of them. There's no double jeopardy. You can't get me twice. So if you're getting me on this, and you're getting me for murder, and you're going to kill me, you can't also get me for a fine. Kam le b'deraba mineh. Now already you understand why there would be two opinions about this. Because on Shabbat, the Bet Din is doing double jeopardy if they kill him and charge him.
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah.
One is something you're doing against Hashem.
True.
One is against the person.
But my action, the one action, which is holding the match to the car, that one action, you can't get me twice for the same action.
What if you light the match?
Good question. We're going to get into other scenarios in a minute. But I want to first give you the first item. I want to give you the first item. Hold on. Ready? I want to get the first item. So I light the car on fire. I took from an existing flame. Gotcha. Okay. I did the yard side candle under the Mercedes. Okay. Hold on. Now, in that case, right? So the only action that I have is lighting the car on fire. So the moment it catches on fire, I broke Shabbat, which is chiyuv mitah. So the court got me for that. They can't also get me for monetary fine. However, in the case of Yom Kippur, I'm not being judged in court. Where's the punishment from? Karet. So maybe I could get you on the monetary because it's Hashem that got you on the karet. So the chidush is, Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana is teaching us that I hold that when it comes to monetary, the same way Shabbat, the death penalty, absolves you from the monetary, so too on Yom Kippur, the death penalty absolves you from the monetary. But that is a huge chidush.
So Beit Din never had the option to give anyone karet.
No. Because karet means cutting the guy off before his years. That could mean that the guy dies before he's 50.
So I'm saying, so
many in the old countries, they would have a massive 50th birthday party because they called it a karet party. They would celebrate the fact that in their life they had not experienced, they had not done something that brought them karet. Very interesting, huh? Okay, so now this concept, I just want to bring it back here.
I think our longevity of life moved to 57.
Okay,
I'll explain that later.
I don't-
People die at 57.
a lot of people die. You're saying karet could be 57. All right, that's like a conspiracy theory. You know, Kurt Cobain died the same. What is it? 27. The 27-year curse of all the rockers. The 27 Club. Okay, now.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, we got into fire and all that stuff. Shabbat. If you light a fire, I'm sure they were all in the desert lighting fire to keep themselves warm at night, whatever. Are you allowed to continue throwing the logs on to keep the fire going?
No.
They froze every Shabbat.
In the desert, they had no problem. Why? Because the Ananei HaKavod, one of the things the Ananei HaKavod did was it was like a surrounding of cloud. It was so thick that it maintained the temperature of what they were in.
Okay, so they got to Yerushalayim.
So as an example, let's say someone's very cold. Let's say someone's so cold he's going to die of hypothermia. Halacha is pikuach nefesh, light the fire. Let's say he's uncomfortable, asur.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay?
So Rabbi, essentially on Yom Kippur.
By the way, interesting. What happens if the guy's at a place where he's going to lose fingers? Where do you draw the line? So there's a whole discussion about this, that at a certain point, sometimes it's a gray area that when you start sacrifice, there's going to be you're going to lose a limb or whatever, that can actually become a life-threatening situation, and that would also be mutar to do for the sake of Shabbat. So you'll be allowed to light the fire on Shabbat in specific cases. Yeah, sorry.
So on Yom Kippur, if someone's mechalel, they don't do anything to the Beit Din.
That thing doesn't do, Hashem takes over.
Karet.
Exactly.
So not
They let go and they let God. Okay?
It's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. It's not amazing for the guy that gets karet, but Tanan Hatam. The Gemara. Right? Tanan Hatam. We learned somewhere else. Okay? Another Mishnah. Anyone that's obligated in karet, shelaku, nifteru midei kritatan. If they get malkut, if they get lashes from the Beit Din, then the karet goes off of them. Okay? Shene'emar, like the pasuk says, v'nikla achicha le'enecha, and your brother shall be, nikla means from lashon kal, he becomes worthless in front of you. Okay, what does that teach you? What do we learn from that? Kivan shelaka hareu ke'achicha. Once a person gets malkut in Beit Din, we say that's kapara for what he's done, and now he's back into the parasha of he's still called achicha. Divrei Rabbi Hananiah ben Gamliel. This is what Rabbi Hananiah ben Gamliel used to say. By the way, I don't know if you ever noticed this, but the old timers, again, I don't know if you were a Syrian and used to go to the mikveh erev Yom Kippur, if you ever saw the rabbis in the mikveh, because I used to see all the time when I was going in deal, they would be hitting each other, but not they're going mejnun, just with a belt. They're just like this on the back. What were they doing? Since it's Erev Kippur, if you got your licks here, you got your malkut, that could take off the karet. So this idea that a person gets punished has a very deep idea. It's called yesh din lemata en din lemala. If there's judgment carried out down here, en din lemala. By the way, that's the line that we all say all the time without realizing it. Kapara. That's what we mean. What happens? I lost 50 cents in the machine. Kapara. Let it be. I owe something. Let this be like I got punished here.
This is the source.
And that's why, and Syrians will say it to anything. Like the guy brings you garlic mayo and not jalapeno garlic. Kapara. Kapara. Right? We use it for anything. And you know what? Ashrecha. Go for it. Because the minute you see that this is something that is, I deserve something, I need to be reprimanded, for kapara. Okay, so then you got kapara. So again, once you got malkut bidei adam, so then that could take off the karet because nikla achicha le'enecha. In fact, the Mishnah in Avot, by the way, the Mishnah in Avot says that when a person comes in to the courthouse, the judge could look at him and say, okay, maybe he's guilty, maybe he's a rasha. But the minute they give the ruling, and he accepts the ruling on himself, the judge himself has to look at the guy like he's a tzaddik. Why? Exactly what we just saw. Minikla achicha le'enecha. And your brother will be, sent down for the flogging. He's get down on his knees. He give him the hit. But now, remember, he just came back and now he's your brother again. Minikla achicha le'enecha. I don't know if any of you heard yesterday Netanyahu's speech. And you know what? As much as he's a diplomat and as much as I know he's playing games and trying to do what he needs to do and say what he needs to say, to hear a president stand up and say, we are brothers and we can't fight like this with each other and we have to restore the balance And like Shlomo HaMelech, I don't know if you guys saw it. He said many hundreds of years ago, there was a case with a mother and the baby was sitting there. They each had a baby, and one of them rolled over bar minan on the baby at night, and the baby died. The other one had the baby, and it was alive. In the morning, both women saw one baby alive. Each woman said, the live baby is mine. They came to Shlomo HaMelech. It's one of the first case he's judging. And they each say, it's my baby. And everyone's looking to see how Shlomo HaMelech is going to... Shlomo HaMelech says, get me a sword. He says, cut it in half, give everyone half. The place is going Majnun. This is the king that we have. Worse than Henry VIII, right? Worse than Henry VIII, and Henry VIII has not even come around yet, right? This guy Bar Minan, forget it. So he asks the first woman, he says, cut it in half. She says, yeah, it's not fair, we should split it. The other one's screaming, no, don't cut it in half, give it to the other, just keep him alive. He says, that's the mother. Because a real mother is a child that couldn't bear to be seen. And he said that in the country, in Eretz Israel, you have factions that are calling to chop it in half. And other factions that are calling to chop it in half. He says, but those of us who understand and have learned history's lessons understand that if you love it, you can't chop it in half. And you can't let it get chopped in half. What a magnificent thing that our leaders are quoting the Torah, using that as inspiration. Even if it's just speech fodder, it's still a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. The Gemara continues. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Chalukim alav haverav al Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel just gave us a chidush, but his compatriots, they argued against him, and they held that just because you got whipped doesn't mean you get out of, it's not a get out of jail free card. You were supposed to get karet. How could you get out of karet because you got whipped? Okay. So the Gemara says, really? Because in our Mishnah, we only had one opinion. Are there dissenting views? Amar Rava. Rava said, Amri Be'Rav, the house, the school, the yeshiva of Rav used to say, okay, Tanina. Tanina. And we could prove it from this idea, we could prove. En ben Yom Kippurim the Shabbat, ela shezez dono b'nei Adam, v'zez dono b'ikaret. We just read the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that there's no difference in the punishments between those two punishments, except for the fact that one has a human punishment and one has a punishment from on high. V'im ita, and if you hold that when you get malkut, then the person doesn't get karet, idi bidei adami. It turns out that both of them have a human intervention or a human punishment which is possible. Why? Shabbat, because the Bet Din will kill you. And Yom Kippur, if you get lashes, then the Bet Din has effectively administered justice and Din. So both of them are Bidei Adam. Right?
What's Bidei Adam mean?
In the hands of man.
Yeah.
Okay? Gemara says, Amar Rav Nachman, what are you talking about? Ha mani Rabbi Yitzchaki. This opinion in the Mishnah is according to Rabbi Yitzchak. The Amar, Malkut b'chayaveh kritut leka. He holds that in a case of karet, right, anything that's chayav karet, there's no malkut, there's no lashes. Titanya, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak says, chayaveh kritot bichlal hayu. Chayaveh kritot, any avera that you get karet if you transgress it, it was in the general concept of getting malkut, so we included it in the idea of malkut in general. V'lama yatzat karet. How come when it's talking about the adulterous case, we specifically said karet, when it's a scenario when a person commits adultery with his sister, leduna bekaret velo b'malkut, to tell you that she specifically gets karet and not malkut. What are we proving by that? That if something has karet, that thing does not also or cannot also have within it any remit for malkut. So therefore, if Bet Din administered malkut, it wouldn't make a difference because that's not a viable or a connectable punishment to anything which has an isur karet. So therefore, according to our Mishnah could still be according to Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina, like we said earlier, ben Gamliel, right? Yet it's not a problem to learn our Mishnah as a disagreeing opinion against his. Why? Because the Mishnah will go according to Rabbi Yitzchak, where there is no option of Malkut, in which case one will have to be Bidei Adam and one will have to be Shamayim. The Gemara continues. How else could we say that the Mishnah Files Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, "Afilu tema Rabbanan." Even if you want to say that it's going according to the rabbis disagree with Rabbi Yitzchak, and they hold that even in a karet situation, a person still could have malkut. And if that's the case, so then we're back to our question of the Mishnah being ze bidei adam v'ze bidei adam. The Gemara answers ze yikar ze dono bidei adam v'ze yikar ze dono bikaret. That's not the fact that you found a backdoor scenario where the human courts could take or do something that would infiltrate or that would impinge on his lechatechila punishment. That doesn't mean that that's its punishment in the first case or in the best case scenario. In the best case scenario, the Mishnah is telling you that there's a difference between karet and between mita bidei bet din. So in effect, what we're learning over here is that there's two ways to extricate ourselves from this problem. One way is by saying that the Mishnah is going to Rabbi Yitzchak that there is no karet, there is no malkut by karet. The other opinion is no, there is malkut by karet, but you know what? It's still not idi v'idi b'nei adam. They're not by human hand because by human hand would indicate that in the first case the punishment would be administered by a human. What we were trying to communicate is that this is a difference between the punishment of Shabbat and the punishment of Yom Kippurim. Okay, let's try and squeeze in one last Mishnah. What time is it? 30. Never mind.
6:30.
Okay.